day off, cleaned the apartment, avoided going to the grocery store, justified, like, I can pay an extra $15 to get stuff delivered. It's fine.
I actually have been doing that too because I don't have a car right now. And so I'm a little worried that when I do get a car, I'm going to be addicted to grocery delivery, and it is more expensive, but it's so nice to just not have to deal with that one little piece of the public and life and chores.
I know, like,
Yeah.
they really have us by whatever it is, because there is no greater pleasure than thinking you have to, like, go out in public and deal with strangers and then you don't.
Says the musician and the podcast host.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am here with singer, songwriter, and visual artist Jenna Fournier. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Nailed it. Also known as Kid Tigrrr, her second album, Stoned and Animaled, is available right now on streaming platforms, as well as exclusive vinyl pressings that are now available for pre-order on madamzuzus.com. Well, thank you for being here. This is an honor.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. So, like I said, your album is being pressed on vinyl. It's going to be distributed through Madame Zuzu's. You just performed over there over the weekend. Tell me about that night, as well as I see you also got a shout out from the owner, Billy Corgan.
Yes, I believe he was in travel back to the States, or maybe playing their last gig. It was a really lovely evening. It's not the first time I've been to Madame Zuzu's, but it was the first time I've played there. The sound system was really nice. The room was really lovely, and a few people that I had met there before when I had just gone up there to pop in for lunch. I go there every time I'm in Chicago. And one time Billy actually randomly showed up and played a solo set, just kind of improv on guitar. It was awesome. And
was this like 2021, kind of like in the middle of lockdown?
It was, you know what? I think it was, because I was in Chicago for a wedding, and it was very much a pandemic wedding, a masked wedding. I think it was probably 2021.
Yeah. So you and I have probably met in person at some point. I knew we connected around the time when I was managing the place, which was throughout 2021.
Yeah.
And I remember that day. It was like oddly surreal. And
yes, I remember now. And I think I just didn't put that together. Yeah, you're totally right.
Nice. Yeah, it was definitely a weird thing. He didn't tell me, he didn't tell his wife. He just, like, he was there earlier in the afternoon. He went home, came back with his guitar, didn't announce to literally anyone, I'm about to do this. He just went on stage and started playing. And, people started gathering. I've never seen anything like the way he can randomly draw a crowd.
I mean, if I lived in Chicago and knew that he hung out there and played surprise shows, I'd probably go there for lunch all the time. So
it was weird being on the service end of it, especially when, things were busier or customers were crankier, and I was just like trying to clean up and get home, because I grew up on the Smashing Pumpkins too. And I wound up literally in a spot like some Sunday afternoons where it's like, man, I really hope Billy Corgan doesn't come in and start playing a set before close.
You hoped he didn't, because you didn't want to get stuck at work?
I think I became desensitized to it. And a few years removed from the job, I'm realizing just how insane thinking that was.
I think it's a human thing to start taking good things for granted. That's why we have to be mindful and nurture our spiritual lives and practice gratitude because I think it's the most human thing ever. No matter what it is, if you have it all the time, it's easy to maybe take it for granted.
Yeah. No, and he's always been a good dude. Shout out to Billy Corgan. I miss you, brother. Um, so are you I saw some inklings that you're a Cleveland native. Did you grow up out there? I wasn't sure of the history.
I've been in Cleveland since 2005 or six,
Okay.
a very long time. I didn't grow up here as a little kid, but I did some school out here. My folks were both in the military, and we moved around every couple years. So I lived in a few different places in California. A lot of my childhood and formative years were in Las Vegas and Colorado Springs, and I came out here because this is where my family settled, and I just I started playing open mics, and that once I kind of, I guess, planted some roots into Cleveland's music community, I made the best friends in my life, and I didn't want to leave.
That's awesome. What was traveling with your family like being that young of age?
I'm grateful for it now. At the time, of course, it was really difficult because when you're really young, your peer group and your friends are so much of your entire identity. So,
Absolutely.
I would make a friend and then have to say goodbye. Um, probably should unpack some of that in therapy at some point and figure out what if there's lingering attachment issues from that. But it was really rough to say goodbye. I mean, this was also a time before you could just connect on social media.
Yeah.
Saying goodbye meant you're writing letters and sending out snail mail until that gets old and you kind of fade away from people. So it was hard as a kid, but it was also I gotta do time in a teeny tiny school where there was 40 kids in a class, or in a grade, and I got to go to a giant Las Vegas public high school that was super diverse, and so I kind of got to see both sides of of life, I guess. A big city school versus a small town school, and I got a little bit of both of that. So I'm grateful for it now.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, especially pre-social media. Nowadays, I mean, it wouldn't be like nothing, but it would be easier to keep in touch. But yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the other side of it, just being able to. Have you found it easier to adapt to different situations as a result?
Maybe it's kind of a there's no control group, to say, oh, if I would have stayed in the version of me that stayed in one place
Yeah.
didn't learn how to adapt. I do think I can adapt. I did a lot of touring when I was really young and kind of just had it in me to pick up and go and sleep wherever, sleep in a van or a car. So maybe some of the moving kind of did that too.
Yeah.
Gave me that.
But the reason I brought up Cleveland was, upon listening to your album, it made me think of a lot of the musicians from out there, like Nine Inch Nails, Kid Cudi, Bone Thugs and Harmony, Tracy Chapman, like all of those people who, if there is one common denominator between you and all of them, it's the willingness to experiment and the versatility and just like the overall like beautiful weirdness of all of them. And do you think that environment helped you thrive? And what do you think it is about that place?
Cleveland's gritty. There's a grit to it that I like, and I think for a long time it was really cheap to live here. And I think when you're in a place like maybe Austin or LA or Nashville, and you're spending so much money on rent, Like I have a lot of bands stay with me when they pass through Cleveland, and they're always blown away by how cheap my rent is. And honestly, I think experimentation takes time, and time is money.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that time to just noodle around with pedals, and I've been able to get by just bartending on the weekends for years and years. And that's a huge part of that is because Cleveland is so cheap to live. So there's time to do music. And if you're not, I'm sorry to cut you off. My dog is crying at me. I gotta let
Oh
her.
no, it is all good. Usually it's my dogs interrupting the interviews.
Come on, bub.
The tables have turned.
Of course, once I start talking, she has to wake up.
Oh, it's okay. I know the struggle. Look, my pit bull is lodged in between my back and the couch right now.
Hi, buddy.
And then I got this guy over here. So I could make a full YouTube compilation of them interrupting interviews. You have nothing to apologize for.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, they're lucky we love them.
Love them so much. Yes. She keeps me present in the moment, for sure.
Absolutely. Let's get to your album, though. I listened to it throughout the last few days. I loved it. It's beautifully written. It's highly relatable. I love the more mellow vibe about it. I'm not a musician, so I don't have the proper terminology. But the overarching theme for it is healing and recovering from trauma and kind of figuring out who you are and where you go from there. And I guess what I'm asking is what prompted you to start writing the project? And did it initially start as an idea for an album, or was it just like feelings put onto a page that eventually took that shape?
It definitely did not start as a concept album. A lot of these songs were written many years ago, and they just didn't fit with my band Nights because we were going into a heavier rock direction, and a lot of these are softer. They're kind of, more dreamy indie folk, maybe still textured with that shoegaze influence, but they're not big rock songs. And I wasn't really able to put a solo album out because I was with a label for 5 years with the band. And so when the label and I split, or the band and the label split in 2020, I not only, of course, had the freedom to finally do a solo album, but I had quarantine time to sit down and really focus on it. And so I wanted to self-record and make a little bedroom pop album with all of these songs. And I had about 40 songs written already. And I kind of looked at those 40 songs, and the concept album just kind of like shone out of the bunch of cards. I wrote them all down on note cards.
Yeah, you did.
And I was very organized over here. And I just kind of saw it, and it seemed like the right time to put this kind of stuff out there and talk about this kind of stuff, because I think everybody was maybe struggling. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people were struggling with their mental health in 2020 for a lot of different reasons. And if you already had some unprocessed stuff going on, I think that the pandemic triggered a lot of people into really saying, okay, I need to maybe get some professional help and deal with some of this stuff and face some of this stuff. And of course, when you have less distractions in your life, you have more time to look inside and, sit down and eat cake with your demons. So that's what I did. And that's how the record came out.
Well, extremely well done. That really is the thing about 2020 and everything it entailed. I was just talking with a friend about this. I really think that year gave everybody the opportunity to either become their worst selves or work on their shit. And a lot of people went to that first extreme, like a lot of people I knew personally. And I did my best to like, mental health is a motherfucker. You have a lot of time to, like when you have a lot of time to reflect, it will go in one direction or the other. And, I think it's great that you picked up that creative medium. Um, One thing I'm always curious about is the media an artist consumes while putting an album together. Was there anything you were like listening to, watching, reading, or anything specific during that time period that helped you?
I was watching a lot. I was watching a lot of tutorials on how to use Logic Pro, and I was watching a lot of recording and production and signal flow and nerdy granular music stuff that I'd made these studio records before, and I was really frustrated that I promise this segues back into your question. um, I had been really frustrated that I sometimes felt like I couldn't speak the same vocabulary as the engineers, and so sometimes self help books or the right sci-fi fantasy novel or something like that does is
Yeah.
the thing that helps me a lot. But in this case, learning really made me feel empowered and feeling like I had some, having knowledge to take control over my creative vision was was really important for me. And so watching those kinds of videos and just digging through, YouTube demos of plugins and all that kind of stuff was like saving me. And I definitely was watching. Billy Corgan was doing these live streams where I don't know if you were following them in 2020, but he was doing these public live streams about trauma, and he was talking about a lot of stuff that I think his own experiences and sharing in a very personal way and inviting fans to join in the live streams. And that was really helpful too, because I was simultaneously in therapy, so there was a lot of mental health conversation in my life at that time.
Yeah, I that's great. And yeah, like thank God for YouTube, at least for the sake of educating yourself on, certain technological things. I did see a couple of those live streams that Billy did. I specifically remember the one that Pam Fisher did in tandem with him. And yeah, he's always been a very open person about what he's gone through. And I think paired with, the public perception of him makes a lot of people think that he's a dick, but he like in real life he isn't. He's like the most aggressively normal human being.
You think he's aggressively normal?
Yeah, he's a middle-aged guy who likes making music and wants to be left alone in public and wants to hang out with his kids and play pinball, and that's the long and the short of it. I feel like anybody who is approached in the way that he often is will fire back, and I don't think that's something to blame him specifically for.
No, I actually I I really like. I know she's gotten a lot of backlash for it, but Chapel Roan came out and talked about the sort of issue where fans bother celebrities, and when they're minding their own business, um and it was really when she first came out and said that, I thought, oh, like, yikes, she's this is going to maybe upset some people, but when I actually read her statement and then I read some of the comments, she started a dialogue that is really important. And I, s- I don't think I even realized the extent that some types of fans put on the artists that they support, because I'm not at that level. And so I don't experience it in that way. And I saw these people that, they feel so entitled to somebody's time and a private time and private attention.
Hmm.
And you know, I you almost I think you would feel bad. I think people would feel bad for what they have to go through if they really understood it. But when you look at somebody up on a pedestal, you 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 how do I say this? It's almost like people's attitude is sort of, well, you asked for this, you asked for this, or you're so lucky you have money and you get attention, you should be glad that people are bothering you for your autograph, right?
Right.
um so it's an interesting thing to sort of watch the dialogue that I think she really lit on fire there.
Yeah, I think the best quote I can think of at this very moment is actually from BoJack Horseman. You ever see that show?
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
There is a character in BoJack Horseman who like starts. She was this like little TV child actress, and then she becomes this huge pop star. She was like modeled after Ariana Grande, and I remember she said like, the first autograph is an honor, the second is an obligation, the third one is a fucking chore. And I feel like there's got to be a lot of truth to that, especially when people approach you with that kind of entitlement.
Yeah, I think it's um and I think we all just need to remember that everybody's human, and there's only one of them, and they need some oxygen to,
Hmm.
some room to breathe. Everyone needs some breathing room. And the weird thing is, I've talked to some friends about this as, as an introverted person. There a lot of artists are introverted people. That's what drives us to spend 6 hours writing in our notebooks, right? And spend 11 hours tweaking frequencies in front of a computer screen because we're introverted nerds, and we like maybe geeking out on very specific subjects with one person. But social situations can be overwhelming. And I think people don't always understand that because they assume that if you're on stage, you must just be craving attention, right?
Yeah.
And really, I think for myself and a lot of other artists, it's the writing that is the rewarding part and the most enjoyable part, not the performances. It's almost like that's part of the job, and it's about sharing and connecting. But it can be overwhelming. That part can be very overwhelming.
I couldn't possibly imagine. Like, I'm introverted like 6 out of 7 days of the week, and there's usually like one day where it's like I fucking need to see people or I'm gonna lose it. And
Yeah.
so I ping pong between the two. And yeah, like to your point, I think the best part, the most rewarding part about creating is actually seeing it happen, not so much the attention it brings. And yeah, like fans probably aren't the best at understanding that. I remember the other day I was reading an article about you, and you said something along the lines of you were grateful for some of the encouragement you got from fans and onlookers. Is there anything particularly memorable that you heard from somebody that you'd like to share?
I some of the most touching things that have encouraged me to keep going have come from fans that have also had like similar experiences with abuse, or they really struggle with anxiety, and they connect to the lyrics. And that just tells me that it gives me a sense of purpose, that the music is really creating a sense of belonging for people. Because if it's not doing that, then it can start to feel like a vanity project,
Yeah.
where it can start to feel really self-indulgent, and that feels kind of gross. So to know that it's actually doing good for somebody else and creating that sense of connection, it makes it feel like there's a purpose to, a purpose beyond my own need to process my feelings, right? And I have a Patreon account, and so I have, a small handful of people that feel kind of like a safe space that I share a little bit more with, and I know that for some of those people, they feel like they really feel part of my journey as an artist, you know, and
Yeah.
having a certain kind of fan like that there, in a way, it holds me accountable because I feel like I don't want to let them down, you know, as weird as that might sound.
No, I hear that. Is that like what keeps you going creatively?
Sometimes it it some I have a drive, I have an itch that I just can't scratch. And um one of the more tortured artist problems, is like I'm never totally happy with anything. I always feel like I have something better in me and I want to make it better and do something better, and nothing ever feels good enough. It's it's like a blessing and a curse. It's a double-edged sword because it keeps you driven, but I'm kind of perpetually dissatisfied. But
Yeah.
so that's part of the drive. But then, the when you when you get bad brains and you're kind of really low and unmotivated, um, I think that's where that boost from, the fans are like the turbo mushroom that give you some speed again.
Oh, absolutely. Your clothes change colors. You have a yellow hat now for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just glad you followed me there and knew what
I got you. I got you, Jenna. um, by the way, shoot me your Patreon when we're done. I will totally subscribe to you. Uh, on top of being a musician, you're multi-talented in a lot of ways. You paint, you do digital art. This is kind of like an asking for a friend in air quotes kind of question. I always admire people like you who can make it all work in tandem and juggle those mediums successfully. Do you have any advice for artists who don't always know how to do so or how to prioritize one thing or another?
That the best advice I can give there is like the stuff that I'm gonna be pulling like straight out of self-help books, which is um discipline is one of the hardest things, I think. Especially, a lot of artists have sort of an ADD brain, and we bounce around a lot of different creative projects and don't finish things. The discipline is really at the root of almost every self-help book I've ever read, and I've read a lot because I need the help over the years. And it's about treating it like a job, in a sense of every every day, maybe 5 days a week, maybe every day, do something. And people get tripped up on that because it's more natural to sort of just obey the muses when the lightning strikes. But if you at least try to get something done every day, you're more likely to receive the lightning, if that makes sense. Like I go up to the practice spot when I don't feel like it, and sometimes I don't get in the zone or I don't get, locked in, and I kind of play through a set and it doesn't feel good, and I hate my own songs and I'm bored of all of them, and my fingers feel really stiff, and my voice just feels like I'm like, oh my, I can't believe what am I doing, But then I might go back the next day when I don't feel like it and get in the zone, and all of a sudden, like, I was trying to rehearse a set, but I ended up writing a song, you know?
Hmm.
And I think with whatever your medium is, you have to be willing to just accept sometimes there's going to be bad days and it doesn't feel like magic, and sometimes there's going to be great days where it feels like magic. And sometimes you're going to make the shittiest painting you've ever made in your life, and you're going to hate it, and you're going to paint over it, and you're going to be in a bad mood, right? But then another time, like, you're going to surprise yourself.
And yeah, and sometimes the second day is like a response to the first day. You knew where you fucked up the day before.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a photographer. I do this. I try to do video work. It doesn't always go great. But for all of that, I've realized just like the hardest thing is just fucking starting.
Yeah.
It's just like getting my ass off the couch. It's like finding that motivation. I think maybe that's where a lot of people end up just giving up.
Yeah, or I think you just place I know people do this, and I know I used to do it. You place really high expectations on yourself, and you look at people that you wish that you were that good, and they didn't. There's such a thing as natural talent, of course, but a lot of people are really great at guitar because they put their 10,000 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think you have to love it, or you're not. I used to teach. I tried teaching guitar to kids for a while, and it wasn't for me because I would get frustrated because these kids wouldn't practice in between our lesson. And I would always tell them, you're not going to learn to play if you're only playing 1 day, 1 hour a week with me. You have to
Yeah.
play in between our lessons. And then their parents would get frustrated with me, like I wasn't doing my job. And I would say, well, is your kid playing in between our lessons? Because they're not going to learn playing 1 hour a week.
Yeah, like that'll slip out of your mind right away. It's like the sense memory of it all.
Yeah. So you gotta. I mean, I think you have to put the time in. Whatever it is. And for me, the different mediums. I mean, I enjoy both. For a long time, music was more collaborative. I was in bands for forever. So music was usually the more collaborative creative outlet, and painting for me was the solitary one up until I started recording from home.
It was like a self versus community type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Well, before this interview started, that was actually my last question, but I do have one more before we go. Tell me about your dog, and tell me about how your dog helps you just from day to day.
My dog's name is Jasmine. I call her Jazz or Jazz Master. She is a Chihuahua mutt.
Oh.
Yeah, she was a 2020 rescue. Her mom had to go into an assisted living home that didn't allow pets. So I took her in 2020, and she's been with me ever since. She's a senior. She's 14.
Oh.
But she's very healthy. She sleeps in bed with me. She comes to the practice space with me when I'm playing quietly, and she just chills and listens to the music. If I'm playing guitar on the couch, she'll come and she'll chill on the couch. I really believe in my heart that she likes music. How does she help me day to day? Well, she gets me out of bed. That's a good one.
You gotta let her out or she's gonna go on the floor.
Yeah, yes. So, maybe I would be more tempted to not get out of bed without her around. But she also gets me outside. I walk her daily. And that has been really good for me too, because without her, I don't always give myself that nature time and that walk, that exercise. As much as I just ranted about discipline, I really struggle with when it comes to physical activity discipline. I struggle with, I don't like running on treadmills, but I'll walk in nature.
There you go.
Yeah, so she gets me outside and she gets me to the park.
That's awesome. My little one is also a Chihuahua mix. So he is a Chihuahua mixed with Lab.
Okay.
I don't know how that happened. I'm assuming there was a step stool involved.
Yeah, that's I got a visual. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I really hope the dad was the Chihuahua. That's all I'm going to say. And my this one is a three-legged pit bull. I got each one after respective breakups. So I'm assuming I'm going to have like a whole ass farm by the time I'm 50.
I mean, you're doing the Lord's work. It's not a. It's a.
I thought you were face palming for a second. Just like, oh God.
No, it's my one of my best friends has predicted that I was going to be an old crazy cat lady since I was a teen, and I turned into a. I don't know how crazy I am, but I'm definitely an old dog lady. But maybe you're going to be an old crazy dog man.
You know, it's better than what my best friend at the time and I envisioned when we were in high school. So I had a best friend. His name was Jared Bailey. I'm assuming he's still alive. But we fell out, reconciled, but moved on. I haven't spoken to him in a long time. But I remember there was one day we were like walking home from school. And I said something along the lines of, just because like I knew who I was at this point already. I was like, I'm going to be one of those guys in like a one-bedroom apartment, stacks of newspapers, empty pizza boxes, a bunch of dogs, and a black and white TV. And he said one of the greatest things anyone's ever said to me. He said, "You're not going to turn out like that, Dan. I'm going to buy you a color TV."
I was waiting for it. I knew it was going somewhere like that. That's you're doing good. You're doing good.